Hello everyone, I hope you've had a great day so far and that you're doing well. For this video we'll be going through an unboxing of the Core Class Shockwave, and it is from the Transformers Legacy line, released by Hasbro and Takara this year being 2022. So I believe Shockwave is actually part of the Wave 2 core classes. I get a little bit confused in the sense that distribution is still a little bit wonky here in Australia. So I'm just going by general recollection. But Shockwave has been recently acquired for the collection, so I thought I would actually try and knock Shockwave out pretty early on. One, because I actually ran overtime with doing some other stuff, so I thought I'll just do a core class to make use of the recording time. So here we have the core class Shockwave. Now this is the second Shockwave that's graced out of the core class line, the first being part of the Studio series where it was the Transformers Bumblebee movie Shockwave, if I remember correctly. He is on the to-do list. We'll get there eventually. But I thought I would actually do this version of Shockwave, which is, I believe, a bit of a throwback to his War for Cybertron incarnation. So here we have the front of the box, Shockwave through the see-through window in his robot mode. And we have a nice shot of his alt mode on the top of the backboard, as well as the standard Transformers Legacy logo all over the shop. That's the front. On the side, nice artwork of Shockwave in his robot mode, and reiteration that this is a core class. And then on the other side, just the usual Decepticon backdrop that we've seen throughout the Decepticon-based Legacy line. So that was the front and the side. In terms of the back, I guess the more important part is pretty much the top section, where we get to see Shockwave in both his alt mode and robot mode, with 11 steps to perform the conversion there. Now, no doubt it's just the angling, but for some reason, every time I look not at his usual blaster hand, but his other hand, I feel it's like some weird type of clawed hand holding onto the side of the radar dish. I'm sure it's not, but if you look at it, it just gives that weird impression. But it's probably me. But there you go. The back of the Shockwave box. So now that we've had a look at the packaging for Legacy War for Cybertron Shockwave, I guess I will pop open the box, get Shockwave out of it, and we will have a better look at Shockwave and his inclusions. And with everything now out of the box and off the plastic ties, so as always we have a instruction manual, which is pretty much a given. We have the Shockwave figure himself, which we'll have a look at in a bit more detail in a moment, and his single accessory of the radar dish. So that's definitely not too bad a assortment of items for a core class. It's pretty much stock standard. So I did do the Hot Rod core class not too long ago. So in terms of inclusions, it's exactly the same. Now before we get too carried away, so we'll just put his accessory to the side, put Shockwave to the side. So here we have the manual, a shot of Shockwave holding his radar gun, maybe? In this particular pose, it actually does look a lot better that he's holding something and not a weird clawed hand. In terms of the manual, so there will be just a bit of a reinforcement of some of his back kibble transformation slotting in nicely, which may or may not be the case after coming out of his cardstock. Bottom image of equipping his radar weapon. And then after that, pretty much going through the transformation process. Unhinge a few things at the back, lift his arms up, fold a few things around. I'm sure for anyone who's done later class Shockwave, some of this will probably be fairly intuitive. The back of the instructions, and then going through the rest of the conversion to get Shockwave into his Cybertronian alt mode, /gun, gun alt mode, whatever. And then obviously the attaching of his radar dish. And yeah, I'm not sure what the part of the tab is for. I don't know if it's supposed to simulate more of his gun mode or something else. Maybe to help him stand. Dubious, but you never know. Could be. So that was the quick look through the manual for Shockwave. And before we look at Shockwave, have a quick look at his radar dish. So it does have some collapse inside. Now for some reason I think, or it could be the light. I don't know if mine's already got a little bit of paint chipping. Could be the light, but you never know. The weapon is attached to the back of the card, so you would be completely clueless to what the state of the paintwork is on the weapon until you open it. So that's the dish, weapon, there's the back of it. It's not too bad detailed, but there you have it. So that's his single accessory. Now, Shockwave being Shockwave, you don't really have a lot of choice as to where you put this, so there we go. Into his one capable holding hand. That Shockwave holding his weapon. Holding his weapon like a firearm. Just not too bad. I guess looking at it this way from some of the different poses, it doesn't look like it's as weird claw hand until maybe it's maybe, yeah, trying to recreate the back image but failing terribly. So that is Shockwave when he is holding his accessory. So now that we've had a look at the accessory ever so quickly, I'll just put you over there. So, Shockwave. Now, did the... Okay, I think I actually did push the back bits in nicely when I took him out of his box. So here we have Shockwave at the core class size. So a nice shot of the front of Shockwave, side of Shockwave, other side of Shockwave, and the back. And I guess we can also do a bit of a top down and a bottom down. Yes, his legs are hollow. That's not overly surprising. So is the back of his forearms if we want to be pedantic, and his head. Lots of hollowness. So overall, looking like a very nice scaled down version of Shockwave at the core class size. He does look fairly detailed at this size, which is something I do recall of the War for Cybertron line, with some of the detailing in their robot modes being quite scaringly detailed. We do have 2 Decepticon logos on his shoulders, which have been applied already. And we do have a spot of yellow on his mono eye, which is to be expected. So, now that we've had a quick look at what he looks like in terms of what he can do. The head does indeed do a nice 360, although as I always say in my videos, why you want to do a 360 is beyond me. Now in terms of his arms, they do go up like that. Whilst yes, the joints allow the arms to do that, once again it's probably in the same boat of just because I can do a 360 with my head doesn't mean I should. So his arms will go up that, and then back down that way. In terms of movement, so they can do a 360 at the shoulder. The elbow is a ball socket, so that can also do a nice 360, and it can also do a nice 90-degree elbow bend, but it cannot go backwards. Probably self-explanatory, but because the arm can do that 360, it can obviously go back, front, can obviously reach up. Yeah, that's actually not too bad. So both arms will do that, and I guess if we want to just do some 90 degrees with both arms, so that's doing it with his gun arm. Just do that with his arms. There's nothing in the waist, which is fine. He does a core class, can't expect it to do everything. In terms of the legs, he can do a full splits. There are ball sockets in the hip joint. Now, you can do a bit of a 360. Once again, whether you should is subject to interpretation. So yes, it can be done. Just probably bear in mind, just maybe hold Shockwave tightly when you do it. So it can do that. The legs can go all the way to the front. If it wasn't for the back kibble, which, by the way, on the note of back kibble, is still quite neat and tidy, which is really cool. The leg can go that far back, but does impact with the side. We know about the splits, so that's not too bad. So the hip joint does allow a good amount of articulation. In terms of the knee bend, so standard 90-degree bend, but the knee joint area, because it's, once again, ball socket, can do a nice full 360 within the socket. Would you, once again, subject to debate. Before we get too carried away, I guess that's what he would look like if he was doing a bend at the knee with his leg raised. His feet are pretty much the single leg piece, so there's no feet or ankle motion whatsoever. So that's a rundown of the articulation of what core class Shockwave can do. Pretty standard. Definitely has enough articulation to do some poses and things like that. Movement where you think there would be some form of impediment, there isn't, but rationally you probably wouldn't do it. Probably. My general take. So now that we've had a look at his robot mode, I will do the off-screen conversion into his alt mode, and then we'll have a quick look at that, and I will do some commentary on how the transformation went, and I guess some final thoughts on Shockwave. And with Shockwave now in his vehicle mode, or alt mode. So this is his alt mode with his dish attached. So being this version of Shockwave is the scaled down version of his War for Cybertron mode, it actually does look like a pretty decent representation of the leader class Shockwave down in a core class. Obviously still a good amount of that detailing comes through in the figure, and it is good that we have some of those silver paint apps just to break up the purple. Could possibly do with a bit more, but what do you expect? So, as I mentioned, he does have his dish on right now. It can be taken off, just like that. So it just hooks in nicely to that little peg hole there. I guess we'll put the dish to the side. So alt mode without the dish on. That's the top, front, one side, the back, the other side, the underbelly. Did we do the back? I think we did the back. Obviously the top. So it's actually not too bad. The underbelly does look a little underbelly-ish, as to be expected. His top view does look quite nice. I think the only unfortunate thing is you can clearly tell there is his hand, there is his other quote-unquote hand sticking through the back of the alt mode. Now, being a core class, can't definitely expect them to tuck away nicely, but I will admit there's actually some additional tabs in these arms that do tab into this top piece here, which does form the back of Shockwave when he's in his robot mode. So that was actually quite nice. The fact that those tabs do lock in fairly securely to actually keep that together. So that is really cool. His transformation to this mode was pretty fluid. The only thing that caught me out initially, and this is based on first transformation, was just the fold over of his legs. There is some, I don't want to say tabbing per se, where the back of the feet will just slide in and align into this part of the waist, and then these two pieces do come together to form the front. But the rest of the transformation was pretty good, and as I mentioned, I do quite like how there's the tabbing here for the arms and this back piece. Now this is pretty much, I dare say, his Cybertronian jet mode. Now there is a little tab, and my comment about his gun mode probably stands true. So if I flip him over, there is this piece here, which, if you look at it carefully, does look like it could be tabbed into a holding hand. So with a little bit of care, and when I say a little bit of care, as in not to cause things to untransform, you can actually slide that item down into this type of position, and unfortunately I don't have anyone on me to sample it, but if I was to do it as a real living person, I would be able to hold that tab in between my fingers and treat Shockwave's alt mode more like his typical Cybertronian gun mode. And I guess you can also, for additional effect, put his radar dish back on for even more pew-pew type of look. Otherwise, the aesthetic is still the same for his alt mode. I guess his underbelly does change ever so slightly with this piece being pushed down. So that's a look at Shockwave's alt mode, both his, I dare say, his Cybertronian jet mode and his Cybertronian handgun mode. So I'll just happily put him there, leave the radar there. So for some general final thoughts on Shockwave. So from a robot mode perspective, everything was quite nice. Articulation's quite good. The back kibble, tabs in and folds away quite neatly. He does look quite good when he's holding his additional accessory. Just bear in mind, certain angles does make it look like that accessory. The purple front part makes it almost look as if it was a clawed hand. One thing I did notice, and I do recall it in Hot Rod, the joints for the knees. Now, Shockwave did feel tighter than Hot Rod, but there is still that weird lack of tightness in that knee joint. I suspect it's probably not going to do much for the posing shots and videos that I do in post-production, but I think if I had to have a criticism of the robot mode, the knee joints were probably, no pun intended, the weakest of the robot mode. So that was the robot mode. In terms of the vehicle modes, well, I'll say alt modes. Technically a handgun is not a vehicle. It does look really cool. I do have Leader Shockwave, yep, floating around somewhere. At some point in time, he will be looked at, and who knows, maybe I'll do a weird Shockwave Inception and have Leader Class Shockwave, whole Core Class Shockwave, just for the giggles. But his alt mode, go English, it does look really, really cool. And I'm probably going to regret saying this. I almost do wish that it did have some of the battle damage type paint apps added, mainly to help bring out some of the detailing. I mean, if you look at the back of Shockwave there, that is a huge amount of detailing. It's just a shame that it's pretty much lost in a sea of purple. So from a actual alt mode, it's definitely very, very solid when I'm not untabbing things. Both his jet mode and his handgun mode. The attachment of the radar dish actually does look quite intuitive. So unlike the usual vehicle modes of, you know, traditional cars and things like that, it actually seemed a lot more seamless having that on this than having a rifle on the top of a sedan. It is very cool that they actually have this little tab here that you can actually use him as a handgun for a larger transform. Now, unfortunately, I didn't plan to have any near me, so I don't know what it would look like scaled wise with a Deluxe or a Voyager. So I might just pull out what I have in the way of a Deluxe and a Voyager to see what it looks like. I won't try it with a core class because I'm pretty sure Hot Rod would not be able to hold him. And even if he could, there's going to be a huge amount of weight issues. So alt mode, I quite like. Yeah, my only critique would be there's a lot of detailing on Shockwave. It's just unfortunate that it is lost in his primary purple. So as a recent release for Shockwave, at least here anyway, but I suspect it would be similar to other locations on the globe, I quite like the Shockwave core class. I would definitely recommend grabbing him, especially if you weren't able to get the leader class one. I think this would be a very nice addition to anyone's collection, whether you're a Shockwave fan, whether you're a general fan of the Decepticons, whether you're a fan of some of these nostalgic legacy figures. I think this particular Shockwave does tick a lot of boxes to be a solid addition. So yes, definitely glad to have him around. In terms of final posing, I will probably have him in robot mode, but I think at some point in time I would actually have him in his alt mode. Actually, it's a shame I don't have bits of Menasor because it'd be interesting to see what the scaling looks like of this Core Class Shockwave, if it's even remotely possible being held by Menasor. I'm sure someone will probably try that in the upcoming weeks for those who do have bits and pieces of Menasor already. In fact, I take that back. I do have Motormaster. Yes. Future video. Don't know when. Just in the future. But yes, I'll definitely try and do some various shots of Shockwave in his gun mode with other transforms, see how it goes. And I'm going to wrap things up there. I think this video has gone on for long enough for a core class. Thank you very much for watching this video. Feel free to leave a like, a comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. All of this does help support the channel and I do greatly appreciate it. Extra content can also be found on my Instagram account, link below. and that will include probably just a summary post and some images of Shockwave and a few short videos, which will also be here on YouTube as well. Stay safe and take care, everyone, and I will catch you in a future video. See ya.